Lift it out, right?
Oh. All right. So starting this off today, and toward the end, there might be a few people come on, or a couple people come on to help us talk about what we expect in the future. But basically, to really get into a year in review type thing, there's been a few people who wanted to come on. Obviously, there's a lot of interesting stuff to talk about, and a lot of things that a lot of people were a part of this last year. So that's understandable. But in order to get through a lot of information, even if we just give it some headline consideration, we're going to keep it basically to us, and us right now is Rick Thompson and Mr. Hashbash Adam Brooks,
and Jamie Lowell.
Jamie Lowell.
Always forgets to mention his own name. Yep.
Insignificant. Last night we did a little bit of it, and that included Medical Mondays, and that included kind of a memory of a lot of people who passed us last year, and went down the list, and we did some tributes and memoriams to those people on the show during the year too, and we should get to that. I kind of have a breakdown of stuff that happened from a show perspective each month, and I want to go through it, and then maybe after each month, a couple of thoughts on it, some input on it, little filling in a few of the necessary bits of information that need to go along with it, and then trying to get through the year, and then maybe we can then take a individual shot at discussing our personal thoughts on the year, what we're thankful for,
highs and lows, right?
Highs and lows, sure. And then hopefully we get a lot of input from people in the chat for all these things. And of course, nothing's going to be complete. It's a show perspective, but please do fill in the gaps. I mean, let's have a large discussion or get all this information recorded, whether it's on here or whether we discuss it on here or we throw it up as a comment. So we'll get a lot of good information out again. So
let's start with those sponsors, though, Jamie.
That sounds like a good idea. I almost pulled a Berg and went right past the sponsors as he did last night.
Well, you're sort of unshaven like him, so
sure, yeah, unkempt. All right, so
it's mean.
Here we are.
Jazz Cabbage Cafe is sponsored by the Botanical Company, Redemption Cannabis, Really Solutions, the Detroit Nutrient Company, GrowGreenMI.com, and Custom 420 Promos.
And I think everybody's coming back for next year, and if not, maybe one or two or three more, which would be cool. And we got a lot of help from Heather Curtis with our graphics last year around this time leading up to now, and a little bit from Jeff Milberg too. He does graphics work, and might have to call on them or both for a little bit more getting into the new year. So we'll see how that shakes out. But
just want to show before we get started. Yeah, White Panther shirt. Rock it out. Where's Jamie's hat? That's what I want to know.
Good deal.
Non-supporter.
I've been wearing it quite a bit. I do like to wear it a lot, and I will again. But this one, just does a good job with my total ensemble. Obviously, I wouldn't want to have to shake that up too much. So, as Adam knows, as a style master, Adam understands completely.
Hey, man.
No, I'm just comfortable in this one right now. So nope, I don't really think about that too much. But you are correct. I do like to put that out there, and it's always cool to think about the White Panthers and a lot of the contributions that John made along the years.
And if you want to learn more about the White Panthers, search the Jazz Cabbage Cafe shows from 2021 that featured John Sinclair. He talks a lot in our show this last year about the history of the White Panthers, about how they were formed basically to just support everything the Black Panthers did. And also a very revealing look at how the White Panthers and their court case might have helped to bring down Richard Nixon.
Yep. So we'll talk about that here. So let's just get started then, because that's the kind of stuff that, would be a part of this bigger conversation, and we'll be able to get through it and then expand on all these things. I just kind of want to make sure we touch on stuff, and also because many people offered ideas and covered a lot of ground when I just asked for what people would like. Some people got a little off track and added a bunch of stuff in that's not immediately pursuant to today's show, but I appreciate that too. So let's start off January 2020.
Wow.
As Sherman kicks in here, no problem.
Everybody wants to get in on the end of the year show.
And hey, it's great to see that Sherm's hanging and has got some
Hanging in
energy
there.
and all that kind of stuff. So he's doing okay for right now, in spite of his many issues. So the month started off not directly cannabis related, but just to mention the fact that January 6th was a rough day in Washington, D.C., entitled The Insurrection. More than anything, it really, demonstrated the extremes of the political divide, the divisive dichotomy that we have here. And I guess use it as an example of how the year started and the fact that cannabis is one of those places where a lot of these different perspectives and philosophies and political ideas can come together and be on the same page. And we saw that this year, and we'll talk about that as we go along. We came in talking about how we had to work with some people in the legislature and the state departments and some groups in order to stave off what we thought was a questionable approach at combining the commercial licenses together. It was something that had been worked on for a while, again, without reaching out to all stakeholders who are involved. This was pointed out to some of the people who were working on it, and people like Andrew Brisboe and others did, in fact, then make an effort to put together, a group and get some different ideas. And Rick, helped to choreograph a really good group, I thought, of people to give some ideas. And it turned out that it just didn't make it through lame duck. It didn't happen. And we were happy. The concept of combining the licenses, not necessarily a bad thing, but the approach is always an issue, and we weren't totally comfortable with it yet. So the end of 2020 contained a victory for us, but also brought us to a lot of apprehension coming into 2021, expecting more fuckery to happen in the legislature. We came in warning, hey, the big money interests are coming, how and when and exactly what, it's going to be something bad, and we'll have to. So we did that. The show moved on to multiple platforms. We got hooked up with that channel in New York, which we're on right now, I suppose, and many other places where the podcast can be either listened to or reviewed or watched. And we're live on Facebook and YouTube, but it goes out all over the place once it's recorded.
The Pro Cannabis Media channel on Roku television, our show appears weekly, Jamie.
Okay. We also had Cass Coleman on for the first time in January. They just had joined the organization with Carbidex, which is the umbrella company for Botanical Company, Franklin Fields, and soon to come Una Labs. And it was on the same day that we had John Sinclair, and Cass had become aware of John Sinclair via his work with spoken word and his albums and notoriety he achieved in New Orleans, and wasn't really aware there was a connection to cannabis with him until they came out here to Michigan. And was able to meet him on that show after already knowing about him from that perspective. And that was the show that he discussed the scenario with the Nixon administration situation, which Rick sent into an organization that was evaluating interviews and offering up rewards or awards for interviews. What's it called? The Communicators Award?
Communicator Awards, yes.
Yeah, and we got it because of that. And John was awesome in that interview, man. It was an off-the-cuff question by Rick, and then John just went into the story, and it included a lot of details and dates and names and all types of shit. So here's a long message from Tony. These long messages don't really work that well for this, but since it's Tony and she has a sincere message, we'll throw it up there. I didn't read it first.
Tony says, this year has given me growth in the cannabis industry through enrollment in the cannabis business program at Lake Superior State University and bud tender training at the Grassy Knoll, as well as learning through continued conversations with Jamie Lowell, Rick Thompson, Deborah Young. COVID-19 infected me in October, and I lived through it. Yay! Next year, look forward to launching MIT HCA to support tribal communities that want to get involved in cannabis. Tony Shenaniquit.
Right on. So... All right, so and then at the end of the month, we also had Ed Rosenthal on that month too. Should mention that that was a good guest. I know the Michigan Grow Show recently had him on, and they were very happy about that. And that's a good one. So that was a nice score for January. But biggest news of the month, happiest news of the month anyway. Michael Thompson was freed on the 28th on a Thursday at about nearly 4:20 in the morning.
Yeah, it was snowing outside of Jackson State Penitentiary. There was probably about a dozen cannabis activists, maybe half a dozen of Thompson's immediate family, and about 30 news cameras from around the United States of America. It was big for us, but it was big for the entire industry, Jamie.
Yep. I agree. And so, he goes on to be, part of our conversations for a while and still is today. It was just in the paper saying that he can't believe how this year has gone. And I know that the following month we talked about how he had about $250K in his GoFundMe. He was about ready to buy a house and, other necessary things. And that was awesome. The Atui case was resolved. That was important. It was with Michael Corn Law, and it allowed for cannabis patients to be able to use their cannabis, even if on probation or on bond or what have you, because they were being denied in most jurisdictions for a long time. We had Jerry Millen on to talk for his Pot for Shots program. That was a big campaign back then. He also kind of gave us the story about how Loom drove around with that truck around his place.
So a competitor of his in the city of Walled Lake put up a big billboard on a truck and drove it around, I don't know, saying something negative about the greenhouse itself.
Yeah, it's greener at our house or something like that. It was really silly. I don't think it endeared people to them. I think it made them look like the chodes that they've demonstrated they are this year.
Yeah,
pretty much. There's some Brett Sutter here from Polarity Science, his own show, plus the Michigan Bros Grocery. We just talked about them having Ed Rosenthal on recently, and everybody should check that out. That's a very popular show. We have a great family of podcasts in Michigan. We should probably hit that list a little bit along the way at some point too.
That's a great interview, and he's got a good history here in Michigan.
Yeah.
Thanks to Rory Gould for bringing him in past years to do cultivation seminars. He helped a lot of caregivers get better.
You're back on Ed Rosenthal here. Okay.
Yep.
All right. So we did the 2-week case, which is profound. Pot for Shots, with the weird competitive loom story. That's also the one from the qPCR testing for microbials was deemed insufficient for what was being needed, and we had Bob Miller on from ACT Labs, the head scientist there at ACT Labs, to talk about that. And by the way, so that's February, and please, anybody along these timelines on anything that we're missing or anything to add, throw it in there. But in March, we had Michael Thompson on as a guest, and that was pretty cool. He was on with Michael McCurdy, who's befriended him, and they have formed the Michael Thompson Clemency Project with others, and that's been very effective in helping to get some really good meetings and conversations going. And
with Marshall Clebeau.
Yep, with Marshall too. Yep. We had Rich Delisi on that same month, who got a release from the Florida State prison system, who had served even longer than Michael, unfortunately. And he came on with Stacy Tice or Diaz. I've never asked her herself how to pronounce her name. We were able to, capture some of the profound scenarios going on with him and his life with his daughter too, and a lot of stuff she went through in the meantime. Big stuff was he was in prison, and that was one. And then we also had Anthony Freed and Drew from Apothecary on, and we were talking about how they were promoting the fact that they were doing the organic, certified organic, which is not by USDA but by a third party that used the same standards, and try to demonstrate that they had those things. And they also talked about how difficult that is to maintain and all that kind of stuff, but it has worked out because some people want an organic line, and they have it. Not too many people are biting the bullet and doing it. So that was March. We got some February information here. Yep.
Jen Bronson says February was when we started the fight with Flushing Township and plunged into the movement. Flushing Township tried to instill a very restrictive ordinance, which would have zoned caregivers out of existence. And due to the work of a lot of activists, including Jen and Buddy and Eric and others,
Tanya,
they were able to.
Joe Sullivan, I think, jumped in on a lot of these.
And Amy Carter. They got the Latrish Mason. They got all of the bad stuff out of that ordinance, and so now it's not so terrible. However, other municipalities picked up on that one and have started to do the same thing all across the state.
We've had Jen out to talk about that. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, because they're all horrible places with horrible people running them.
Yeah, there certainly doesn't seem to be any compassion in their decision making.
Yeah, when we discuss the people who we've had to pay tribute to, Marvin in April that we're about ready to enter into, will certainly be on that list. And we did a special show actually.
Marvin got his own show.
He did.
I don't know what that is, but there you go.
Never had his own feed, but he got his own show.
So the 50th Hash Bash also took place in April. And
Yes,
let's reference that a little bit. Man, we're at this event at the Ralston space where John's rally, anniversary of his 50th rally took place recently. And we're hanging out with John and Adam and I think Deb and I think maybe even Jen was at this one too. I'm not sure who was all hanging out, but a few people are lighting up joints and somebody, lights up a nice joint near Adam and Adam says, how you can tell Marvin has passed? And people said, why? He didn't run over here immediately as soon as you lit up that joint.
We love Marvin. Professor Surowitz was a great guy, but he was kind of showful when it comes to bringing cannabis to a party.
And party, that's usually IE in this context, just for future historical reference, but Ryan's right in on it. And we're going to talk about Ryan a little bit. He was part of some big stuff that took place this year. And there's Jen confirming that she was at that thing. And here's Michael, who also finds humor in it. Very good friend of Marvin, helped to really chronicle a lot of his important stuff, for a while. And all right, we moved up to StreamYard, this platform, in that month. We also had Danny Danko on to talk about New York legalization. And Danny Danko, of course, former editor of Cultivation at High Times and many other things at High Times. Now he's got the Northeast Leaf.
He does. Plus, he also has his own podcast called Grow Your Own Weed. Grow Your Own Bud.
And just I want to point out, too, I was looking at some of the old comments. There's post comments after these things are on there, and I haven't gone back to look at a lot of those, but particularly like older episodes, because a lot of times there's like one or two, and sometimes they show up, sometimes they don't. But I looked at this one that was sitting there, and somebody named Nicholas Alvarez, who's a friend of Danny's from Portugal, wrote this one. He said, "Hey, Grow Bud yourself sent me here. Great to hear the latest from Michigan. You are miles ahead of Portugal, but your information will help to shape how things unfold here. Have a great week." I thought that was good enough to share.
That is great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Very cool.
And we did our special show on Leonard Peltier.
We did.
In April, and Malcolm MacKinnon, of course, also longtime editor and journalist and photographer with High Times, also journalist and photographer in his own right outside of that world. And I think he works with Champs, or did for a while.
He did, but NativeAmericanPhotography.com. Take a look at Malcolm's work.
Yeah, sure. Yep. Awesome stuff. And tied in here, we had him who had been covering the story of Leonard for years. He's about 30 years. He visited him in prison. And he helped to really conduct that show with us and get some of these really, really good guests, including Gene Roach, who was at the scene of the incident in which there were some FBI agents killed, and later Leonard was arrested for it. But the tragic issue is he did not commit the crime. Right. And we talk about that, and plus his son, Chauncey Lee Peltier, was on as well. And that was a pretty profound show, and really learned very clearly that it seems as though everybody knows he didn't do it, but he's just there taking the hit, for the community.
If you'd like to learn more about that, you can certainly watch our episode, but also there's a movie by Robert Redford called Incident at Ogala. Ogala. You can take a look at that for more details about that. Everyone in the industry should know Leonard's story.
Yeah, that was a rough one. So in June, we focused the whole show on giving tribute to Rainbow Farm and wanting to hit on that history. We had people that were just directly involved, and they were brutally honest about what they thought about the series of events. Adam was tied in with that. Those discussions pretty heavily for being around there and being connected to these guys. Rick Antis came on during that, one of the newer guys working there or helping to organize things there now, and who also went on to help us out with a lot of these things throughout this last year in terms of some activism and advocacy and stuff like that. We had the Nobo founder on, who took a weird direction a little bit with talking about some of his views on some of the players in the industry, and it didn't really get past us that much. And it wasn't great, although it is generally a pretty good place. And from what I understand now, they've got a guy in Michigan running this thing, who I have not met yet, or I can't think of his name either. But
he said some stuff that got him a little bit of a hard time. Yep.
Yeah, I don't need not being too negative as long as we don't have to tonight. But that's what happened. Just kind of recounting history here. Senator Irwin made an appearance. We talked to him for well over an hour and got some insight into what was going on in the legislature. His own campaign was ramping back up again. He's starting to raise some money back then for this coming year. This is obviously a campaign year coming up. That's one of the things I'm sure we'll talk about when we get to looking into next year. We had Representative Johnson on, along with Richard and Robin Schneider that day. But one of the focuses that day was the fact that Representative Johnson helped to create the first legislative cannabis caucus. That was getting underway. And it's pretty much June, I guess.
Rally of the Allies was right around there too, Jamie, right?
You know what? Yeah, but I don't know how much it didn't show up in some of the descriptions about the shows and stuff, so I didn't, I guess, record it. But that's one to definitely mention since.
Because I'm modest, right? Well, we organized an event to gather people together from all different aspects of the community that were all aligned for the same purpose, even if we came from different angles. It was very successful, and I think because of that, we were able to later on in the year successfully mount an effort to derail some of the bad caregiver bills that were introduced.
Yep. That was cool. A lot of people made touch base with each other for the first time at that event. Yeah.
Big thanks to the Stavros family for hosting the location. I did all the organizing, but they really did the tough stuff.
Yeah, had a nice tent and some micro brewed root beer on tap. Which was good. Yeah.
That was good.
So in July, we had Anthony from Apothecary on, who was promoting his new cannabis concept, and we went to Apothecary and broadcast from there, from the front lobby. Yeah, from the lobby and then on the bus too. But that was kind of cool though, because they the point was to go to historic places, talk about the history of cannabis at these places, and I thought it was kind of cool. It didn't really stick. There was also, some surges and ups and downs with COVID and stuff like that. We just decided not to proceed. But that idea was good, and I'm sure that somebody or they will get something like that back into motion. And here we go. Jen is confirming that Rally of the Allies was a good event. Rudy Gammo and Judith Pontius case we discussed. Also, we had attorney Barton Morris, who represents both of them. Judith Pontius, of course, is from Ypsilanti Township. Their overly restrictive ordinance was enforced because she allowed some police to count her plants innocently, not believing she was following the law. In fact, they confirmed that she was by state law, but not by the local ordinance, which in and of itself should decide the issue right there. You can't be more restrictive than the state law. But anyway, she went on to be hassled and attacked and prosecuted as much as they possibly can. and she had a lawyer that was challenging it. But when as was getting to the Supreme Court, they decided to let the DeRuyter case decide instead of, see what that's. The DeRuyter case came out very strange. There's Rick with his free Rudy shirt on, and it didn't really settle the law except for in a narrow aspect, a narrow part of the question. Yet it was used by townships and cities, municipal league and township association encouragement to test how much local control they can have and how far they can take, zoning and then restricting caregiver activity. And so it was remanded down back to the Court of Appeals, in which they reversed their good decision that was based on some other previous good court decisions, such as Verbeek. And then it was never challenged. Had Barton Morris been the attorney at that time, it would have been challenged back to the Supreme Court. And I think we would have found out that Judith is not the example of what they were trying to address in their ruling. She ended up taking her garden down and getting a $500 fine and some other things. It's hassle and it's annoying, but she's okay. Rudy Gammo was denied around this time. He had a chance, as long as the judge was going to go along with it, to get out of jail. The judge decided not to go along. It was kind of a reconsideration of his sentencing based on what he happened, the fact that things he did are legal now, and these other appeals.
The prosecutor in that county now wants him freed because she no longer believes that this charge should have ever been filed.
Yeah, one of three really good prosecutors that were elected or reelected around the state, replacing one of the worst on this issue for sure, and has come through in a lot of ways demonstrably with the promise that there would be a better approach to this.
Carrie McDonald.
This whole thing.
She's one of the few people that come through with anything weed related.
Yeah.
And after promises made.
Yeah, I agree.
More power to her.
We had Rez Khan on along with Alan Meyer from Global Cannabis Congress. And of course, that's Rez Khan's organization, but he is also the president of DNA Genetics. He had been on Medical Mondays, and we continued the conversation, and he came on to talk about some things, and it was really interesting. We have him back on because now there's some more, legalization bills and related items introduced on the federal level, and some implications and strategies and all that kind of stuff. Be interesting to get kind of caught up from what's going on. The Global Cannabis Congress is involved pretty heavily in all that. And that was one of the stories I thought was on Medical Mondays. I thought was big for their shows, is getting him on and having him say clearly that he contradicts his partners here in Michigan on their view of this stuff, and has been trying to help us out, as well as when we exposed pleasantries, even though they left the MCMA, even though they put out a pro caregiver statement or seemingly pro caregiver statement, they still clearly supported unnecessarily taking away caregiver rights and hurting that system there, exposed on that show. We also had Kevin Spittler on that month. That was cool for me, or I think for a few of us. We have a long history with him. He's been a big part of stuff for a lot of years in Michigan. He eventually took his place. It was really cool. Right outside of Kalamazoo, was it Ishtamo, or I forgot.
Oshtemo Township.
Oshtemo Township. And he had a cool place. It's one of the first places that had everything tested just voluntarily, utilizing controversial yet very cool testing method that Ken Byer and the Michigan Testing Authority were using, this acoustic wave technology. It works now, but that particular time they could tell what was inside something, but not the composition. But it was still really cool, and it helped out a lot. We were both part of a study that happened through Wayne State with a student who was getting his doctorate in medical sociology, and it was all sanctioned by the IRB and everything. And that was cool to reflect on. But he ended up going to Ohio, starting up the Toledo Hemp Center, THC. And that was a very cool thing. And that still sits there as a successful thing today. And I think he's going to be entering Michigan, the market in Michigan at some point, and coming back. And it was cool to kind of touch base with him again and recognize his contributions too. And he was a part of the MAC with us, the First Industry Association. We also had Adam and Ponyboy checking in from Champs in Vegas. That was cool. Ponyboy sang a little bit for us too. He gave us a glimpse into some of the new stuff he was doing. Yes, and in just a second here, Tyler wants to say hello. Brenda's pointing out that the person who did the research, the medical sociology candidate, PhD candidate, was David Peters, Dr. David Peters, and he was already a lawyer at that time, and he was shifting gears in his career or in his life, just shifting careers in his life. We had attorney Sean Gallagher on, and at that time he was helping out John Schickler and company with the Cannapalooza situation. There were some locals in the area that didn't like the idea that there was going to be a cannabis-based event taking place there. I met him at the Rallies for Allies meeting, actually, for the first time, and then hung out with him a little bit when he put on his little shindig that I guess he does regularly at the MICIA conferences up north.
Yes,
and we hung out at that thing too. There's Anton. Already getting into the future prognostication a little early, but it's positive nonetheless.
Anton Harb from the Hero Project. Thank you for contributing.
Absolutely. So August, we had Andrew Brisboe in a pre-recorded interview talking about the new packaging rules.
Boy, that was terrible. And you know why it was terrible? Because I had all kinds of audio problems. So the director did great and Jamie did great covering, but I didn't
do too great. I was kind of a dick. I couldn't connect with the fact how important it was to save the children kind of attitude that was going on, and I kept on doing that. But anyway, we got through it, and I apologize to him. the information got out nonetheless, and we had Paul Tylenda on, who's been on quite a bit, who I think we'll see a lot more of this year too. He was on he's not going to come on today, but he was on like 5 shows in a row, and he's going to come on once or twice a month, I think, from now on. And as we get the need for legal analysis and that kind of perspective, we'll have a consistent, perspective on that through him. We also had Amy Carter on in August, and More Than Hope was discussed, of course, along with Jaden's bill quite a bit, and Amy and Latrish and many others have gone on to really, a lot of different areas, whether it's local things or working in Lansing, and got some really good meetings, have helped to change some minds, and they're continuing to do that, which is awesome. Entheofest took place. We discussed it. We had it. We recapped it. That was quite awesome. That was pretty historic.
Those who don't know, Ann Arbor legalized the use of hallucinogenic substances, including mushrooms and things of that nature, peyote. And they had a festival to celebrate that success. And the festival was amazing. Barking Dog, Daryl Brown delivering the keynote speech. That was very powerful.
We had Josh Covert. That was part of, I tried to have a kind of a series or touch on at least a lot for people how to handle police encounters. There's a series of YouTube channels out there that demonstrate scenarios when police, just because people don't understand their rights or where the limitations are, just kind of run roughshod over people's civil rights and
that
get them involved. Yeah, well, I suppose that's why. But a lot of them, as we've learned from people on here, just get trained like that. They think they're doing a good job in their minds.
I've always maintained that the problem is that, and it wasn't even in places like Detroit. It was so obvious that old white cops taught young black cops how to be old white cops.
Right.
And things didn't get any better when the police force started to look more like the inhabitants of the city, because they were still cops and they still
because the culture didn't change. The culture didn't change.
Right. And it's changing now because they're being held responsible for some of their actions, and they don't have the immunity that they used to have, so that's a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And then we had Mikkel Goodman on. He was a local candidate for political city council. He won.
Pontiac.
Fast forward, Pontiac. And he was on with Leah Schuyler, who was his campaign manager and also the chair of Young Dems, Michigan. Been on a few times in that regard. All right. Now, here we go.
Sorry about that.
We come into September, of course, where we did have the bridge walk and the rally, and Ryan Bringold, along with Zara Boss, did a great job in organizing those things. We also had DMAC on. We were talking about,
hang on, Jamie. You just got to stop up. You got to back up a little bit because you just brushed over the rally and you brushed over the walk.
Well, we could talk about this the months after we do it. We could do each thing too, if you want. Go ahead.
Well, first of all, let's talk. The bridge walk is the Mackinac Bridge Walk. So that's a 5-mile bridge, which we walk along with thousands of other people in order to generate attention for the cannabis industry and normalize our experience here. And then the rally was actually a rally on the steps of the Capitol building, which had hundreds of people at it, and in which a lot of people spoke out their displeasure with the proposed cannabis bills that have been out there. And I think we had several representatives speak. So
that's all true. And those were significant. I mean, and then, the big story, or the ongoing big story, is this caregiver attack. And these things and a lot of the stuff that we're talking about in this last year were a result of that. And a lot of the topics of our show and actions taken. So very true. That weekend right before the bridge walk, the Labor Day weekend, we were up at Kalkaska with Darren. We had him on to talk about that a little bit, and he helped us to celebrate the beginning of adult use at the Botanical Company in Kalkaska. And he talked about Pond Jam a little bit, which takes place. Well, they takes place on many weekends usually, but this last year, due to COVID and stuff, they decided to have one on that weekend. So that was going. I know Rick hit that too. Yep. And then, and speaking of cops getting trained and how we know that, Steve Miller was on that month, and he was talking about that very thing. And in a committee hearing in Lansing, he talked about how he was trained to go find people who look like they're vulnerable and try to force an investigation and an arrest. And specifically said minorities and all types of stuff that was really horrible. So we continued to talk about the anti-caregiver bills and started talking about all the time how caregivers remained under attack. We did the Anthio-Fest discussion. I already said that. And the bills actually come out. So they come out around the time of the rally.
Yep. The rally was September 15th. The bills hit the 13th, I believe.
Yep. There was the MRA had a hearing on the new public rules. We did a recap on that. And National Cannabis Industry Association has a conference in Detroit. And Cass Coleman was on to talk about both of those with us.
I believe she spoke at that event too.
Yeah, was a keynote speaker at the NCIA event. In October, Cass came back on, and along with Brandy from ASA, and we recapped the committee hearings. By that time, the bills had made it to the Regulatory Reform Committee. And we discussed how that went. We also had John Sinclair's 80th birthday celebration at GC3 in Flint. And Jeremy and Ramona helped to host that. And there's the footage of that on our Facebook page. Canna Jam took place.
That was great.
Yep. We continue to discuss the bad bills. Of course, Jeremy comes on now to discuss more local issues with Genesee Township. That's one of the ones where there was just so much support that came in response. I mean, Vehicle City and Genesee Township was being targeted.
GC3.
GC3, right? Oh, Jen was talking about on the way back from the conference how she drowned her car and had to get a new one eventually. Had to get another one, which I believe is now in her possession. So thankfully, but that was fucked up. There was a lot of flooding going on, as there is in this area, really badly all the time. When there's excessive rain in a short period of time, we can't handle it.
Well, and she was taking Brandy home too. And Brandy doesn't drive because of her epilepsy, so that's a mission of mercy she was on. So
we're certainly trying to get meetings with lawmakers and ask people to write them and call them and all that kind of stuff. And Bradley's letting us know that he did that. I know a lot of people did. Okay. The bills passed out of committee. And then we talked about what that meant. And of course, we were ramping up meetings. We had Zara on. And Zara just did a fantastic job, via either the Cannabis Caucus or her role on Michigan Normal on the board. Got meetings with many lawmakers, and they were crucial. Yeah. We had Patrick Frakes on. He came on. He discussed the aeroponics use a little bit at Rare, but it was a time when he had just struck a promotional deal with Ben Wallace. We thought that was cool. We talked about that.
He spent time talking about his own cancer story too, and how he used cannabis medicines in the aftermath of surgery in order to heal himself, and that was really powerful.
It was, and a lot of people mentioned that afterward too, and thought that he would be really good to help even educate the lawmakers because of that.
Yes.
Here's Rick, who we discussed earlier a little bit, and the Viridis recall goes down, and we're like, holy shit. $230 million or 60-some thousand, whatever the numbers were. It was just, I can't believe how huge this is. We went into November, still concerned about these caregiver attacks and efforts to change the law. I think it was probably around the time when the new bill that was to be tie-barred again without any input from the stakeholders about helping women and minorities with grants to have cannabis businesses. We talked about that, and then the lobby day took place too, in which many of these groups and organizations and individuals and people of concern all got together and helped to arrange appointments and talking points and groups of people to go talk to lawmakers face-to-face in their offices. I think that was very helpful too in this process. Proposal E passes in Detroit. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say that grassroots effort makes a huge difference.
Right on. We had Shannon Walters from Light Sky Farms, favorite old school place.
Detroit's Proposal E was a measure similar to what Ann Arbor passed earlier regarding psychotropic substances.
Entheogens, yeah.
Entheogenic substances. I should use the correct phrase, or else Julie Barron will beat me.
Yeah, and Ryan says that's how the dinner idea was started once the bills came out of committee.
Yep, and we did have a legislative dinner where we hosted about a dozen of the legislators and far more of that staff members from other places, and we were able to let them see, touch, and feel actual cannabis plants and talk to real people that had cannabis experiences.
That is true. And then also, we've had Anton on already. We had him on, and we talked about the 1,000 turkey giveaway, which was very successful with Lighten Up.
Tony mentions, just to read this comment that Jamie flashed up here, do we have a final count on how many joints were smoked on the show? That'd be a fact. You guys crushed it. Wow, that's hard to estimate. 52 shows. There's at least 3 of us. When Deb's on, she smokes nonstop. So, that's just...
You know what? I haven't smoked one yet today.
I realized when I lit my
Holy
joint
shit.
that I think I was the first person smoking a joint.
No, mine.
Wow.
I started.
Thank you.
Right,
Thank you.
Rick had hit the roach. I had seen that in the roach clip earlier.
Hey, Tony's one of our great sponsors, Grow Green, Michigan, and
Just a fun guy. Fun
be back
dude.
next year. We'll do some cool stuff. Maybe we'll make it out there for some broadcasts. Yeah, he always has great events too that we've talked about many times. And thank you very much for reminding me so that I will now smoke a joint.
Well, when we talk about 2021, we're getting close to the end. Jamie should finish out his thing, and then we can speak more broadly about those who passed and those who were born.
All right, so
He was joint obsessed, and now I put him back on
I
task.
got it.
Jamie's
I
got
got it.
pages of notes from the show.
Yeah, we had Gus Rosagna on, and he said 2 things that were pretty cool. And he's He's a professor at University of Michigan in the School of Pharmacy. And if I'm not mistaken, Rick and I are going to be like involved in one of his classes coming up this year. There's a discussion in one of his classes, and he teaches Pharma 420, which is one of the few cannabis classes available there. And he is seeking more leadership in the academic setting. So he wants to be involved at University of Michigan in more of the administrative decision making, because he's trying to like do research with hemp and cannabis and things, and he's trying to pave the way, in which he gets a lot of resistance when he suggests these things, you know. And then he also discussed about how overregulation does not work, and I agree with him, and I think that was a good discussion. And we talk about that now when we're talking about the issues that commercial industry has and their concern about the black market, so to speak.
He also wants to grow weed on Mars.
That was the more interesting part of the conversation, as far as I'm concerned, always.
Well, he wants to get Elon Musk to give money, and he thinks if he can let him know that, hey, you know, having hemp or cannabis involved with sustainability, which does make a lot of sense. It's a very multi-purposeful plant, as we all know. That might get his attention. We might get some funding on some stuff, and we get research and all that kind of stuff. He thinks a couple steps ahead, and that's why he's
I just want to be able to smoke a joint on the diag unmolested.
I would like Hash Bash to return.
I think you've done that a few times. Adam.
Yeah.
I think
we've had no
without any
Hash Bash.
molestation been able to smoke a few joints up there.
Yeah.
I miss the days of molestation on the diag.
Yeah. Your eyes are super squinty today, Mr. Hash Bash. Wow.
No, they're not. I'm wearing the wrong glasses.
So we had, Paul's been on a lot, and I guess he'll be coming on, and he came on again, and we talked about how he got some, he was involved with getting some returned property that was seized from Lapeer. I know Comorn and other law firms were involved in that bigger overall case that was going on, and with many cases in that area.
Rockine do, yeah.
Yeah, and we like talking about that stuff because Gary Parks and some really abusive lawmakers, good old boy type, horrible stuff taking place out of that area, and to defeat them and have a story like this is something we kind of like.
And it's on the record. That's what's even better. Everyone knew Gary Parks was an asshole, but that case proves it.
Yep. And of course, Paul says maybe U of M stance on marijuana will rub off on Washtenaw Community College because they still seem to be in reefer madness mode. That's what we need. We need one university to step up and say, I'm ready. Let's do it. And then once somebody goes first, others will follow.
The problem with these universities, they all claim that because they accept federal dollars, you can't smoke weed, which is bullshit, because the federal government has never said, if you allow them to smoke weed, we're going to take your money. Now, they implied it to the University of Michigan at one point over Hash Bash, but that's not a policy of the federal government that they're going to take federal dollars away. That's just something that these organizations use as an excuse.
Yep. Remember when cities used to cite federal law as a reason why they couldn't adopt cannabis rules in their place? And then the Turbeek versus Wyoming decision came down here in Michigan, which reversed that. And then all of a sudden their favorite excuse went away. But boy, they sure worked it well they were capable of.
Yep. And of note about that case that we brought up recently, too, in light of all these attacks on locals by these big money interests also, is that was done by way of a request for an injunction on that policy. It was not a declaratory judgment or in response to getting busted or hassled or fined or somehow compromised over it or something like that. And so either one can take place. And Attorney Barton Morris said that. We talked about Dexter when we had him on and about that. And you have to have 5 acres trying to like make it, an agricultural type situation, or it's obviously just being done to be restrictive. And in fact, people have researched, maybe Jen told me or somebody, that there's only like one piece of land that's available right now that would qualify for that. And then we mentioned it to Paul Tylenda when he came back on, and he laughed as we were saying it. So, I mean, it sounds like that there's so many problems with that 5-acre thing. If
Well,
not some of the others that are in there, that's going to have to get challenged. And
that's that's what I think 2022 might be famous for.
yeah,
I'm hoping that there's a bunch of lawsuits coming, and I'm all about raising money to pay lawyers to sue people.
Yeah, and I agree. But here's the thing. Those things usually take multiple years to get through the court system. And until that actually gets a positive result for us, the default law is the negative one that exists right now.
Or if we can change the law, sometimes that can
understand.
happen too, and that'd be the other
But
way.
the courts are our only path to victory.
I understand. However, as soon as you file an actual lawsuit, you become a legitimate news story. And I believe that we can use this as a stepping stone to just show how punitive some of these things are. We can utilize the cases to show examples of what's being done in a licensed legal situation. I mean, we're entering a new era, a new generation, and they're still behaving this way in these local communities.
On our show, Barton Morris mentioned the possibility of using injunctive relief to stop some of these things before someone gets jammed up in the legal system. I love the idea. One of the problems that we've had forever is that you had to find somebody who got busted before you could actually file a lawsuit. And that really hindered us because most of the people that got busted simply didn't want to go through all of that hassle. They just wanted it to go away. And Jim Bronson talking about using a municipality as a test case. That's what needs to happen in order for us to get lasting change to this bad DeRuiter decision.
Yeah, or we change the law, but that's not as likely. So
yeah, it's a tough path with the Republicans in charge of both the House and the Senate.
So the Veritas complaint to the state went down, but after the recall took place. We did a special show too on the Veritas. Should mention that we had APCO Labs on, Amy Brown. Is that right? And
that response from Veritas was eye-opening.
So then we had a judge's ruling from that, and it was the split the baby ruling about about how the North Lab didn't demonstrate the issues, even though the procedures, the same operators, and everything was the same. The same issues that made it unreliable took place there. They didn't actually have bad results. Yeah, so it was very strange, but there's a motion for reconsideration. The judge, we talked about that too. The judge still said, I did this correctly, but it should be the system, or didn't say it. I did this correctly as facts. That was not a consideration of mine, that this might happen. So we kind of thought maybe the system should kick in. So then when something comes back in, because some of that stuff from the North Labs was retested, and when it was retested, it was failed.
27%.
And that's even mandated to go back on the shelves. We thought, the regular system should flag it, and you just can't go because it's against the rules for things that don't pass the test to make it to the shelves. But the judge didn't leave it there. The judge mandated the stuff back on the shelves, or at least,
Well, he mandated it returned to the
right. So the fact that it was tainted was not good enough to stop it from re-entering the system. Then we thought that there would be, because of the circumstances, that there would be some recognition on those products, and we're joined by Jim Saleh, that there would be some recognition at the time when you go to buy one, because in the old days of Rule 19 and the emergency rules, after a little while, when somebody would buy untested caregiver cannabis, there was like a disclaimer sheet that people had to sign. And so, I think Rick and others thought, hey, maybe, it makes sense if they pointed out this tainted cannabis, somebody wants to buy it, fine, but at least let them know that that's what they're getting, And but that's not the case. It just goes, as Rick found out, it just goes directly in. Have you read the label, saw the location at the time, you'd know that there was that 27% chance that your product is.
But that's all
tainted. But that's the most you can get out.
And that's a far more thorough investigation than any consumer normally would do prior to purchasing cannabis in a distribution center. So to expect a majority of people to go through that process is difficult. I just met with the director and other members of the MRA. I do a monthly meeting with them for our consumer connection. And I asked specifically, is there an extraordinary process they have to go through to sell this bad cannabis? And they said, no. You can just sell it straight through the metric system, even though it's got a flag that says it failed testing. So
because they issued a workaround.
There's no way to know.
but they were proactive in it too. They issued a workaround for the metric system.
Yeah.
And I understand that a judge ruled that it had to be returned. I don't believe a judge ruled that it had to be sold.
Right.
Well,
the retailers shouldn't be doing it. But then again, if you can't differentiate between who knows which the 27%
Yeah, but
is.
don't forget, these are the same people that are remediating their own product after it fails an in-house
I know
test.
they should just, if I were, I don't know what's going on specifically, but I don't believe for a second botanical company would sell that stuff. And if I were a retailer at large making my own decisions, it wouldn't hit the shelves.
I'd
no
hang a
matter-
big
no
sign
matter
in
what.
my window that said, 12% of my product was affected by the recall. It will not be sold here.
Yep.
Do not fear.
Right on, and take advantage of it. Yeah, right. And actually
Take
promote the fact
advantage
that you're not
of
doing
the
that.
horror that just that befell me.
So
at one time, we estimated that 27% of the Veritas North cannabis to have a value somewhere around $30 million. So the entire package from Veritas North was like 120, but this 27% was roughly 30. So
that's a huge consideration. There are people that were tied into that so deeply
Yes.
that it was just devastating beyond recovery.
and to just discard or destroy that would probably be a real blow, especially at the end of the year when your profits are always kind of wanky. So
I don't have any sympathy. Sorry.
Yeah. I know.
So just keep on going here. We'll talk about a little bit more of this in a minute. So the now Veritas has is pushing for some type of a mediation with the state. I don't think they're going to get cooperation from the state on that, but that is the latest push from Veritas. You have some thoughts on that, Rick?
Well, prior to that, the MRA said, "Hey, look, we're not going to sell this nasty cannabis." So they pushed back against the judge, and the judge said, "I said you're going to sell it all." And so the judge forced them. So there was already a legal step taken in between that. Now, what Veritas would like to do is resolve this issue, resolve all of their outstanding issues with the MRA through a court mediator. And so they've tried to get mediation for that, which seems snarky. How in the world can you?
Well, how about adding in the fact that they want to choose and supply?
They want to choose a mediator.
Yep, and we've discussed prior to it about all of the threats from incorrectly testing for mold and aspergillus as claimed by the Marijuana Regulatory Agency. But you can look up news reports and see that there's a significant concern about the way Veritas tests for THC. They have a special proprietary method called the Veritas method that only they use, and it yields super high results. And because of that, they get a lot of attention from the cannabis cultivation community, to whom a high THC number translates into a more profitable product. So I think what they're really trying to do is to head off mediation about that. Because if they've been incorrectly reporting THC numbers on all of their cannabis, I mean, talk about you thought that was a big recall. Holy shit, right? If all of the numbers are wrong on all the cannabis Veritas has ever tested, Jim's nodding his head. He understands. They brag that they control about 60% of the market. That's a $2 billion market, people.
The fact that they're even allowed to do that is ridiculous.
I agree.
Because they came out and they explained what they were doing, and it's part of their sales pitch.
Yeah, so those guys are former cops, but it's not it's not just that they're former cops. That's the problem.
They're former dirty cops that have played dirty pool.
Yes.
Well, they might not be cops anymore, but they're still dirty, obviously.
No. But the fact is that these guys were entrusted with the public trust. They then did something that they thought was helping the public, which was just destroying people, destroying lives. And then the hypocrites that they are, they get into the weed game, at which point they know how to fudge the system because they've been fudging the game for years. And they know about mediation, and that's the other thing.
Yes.
I'll point this out right now. There ain't one motherfucker that got a felony that was able to mediate his case.
Nope.
Yeah.
So
fuck
right, them.
I agree, but let's move on a little bit. I mean, we're getting a little more
Sorry.
in depth. Although, hey, if
We're
there's
bogged
time and
down
room-
in December.
If there's time and room and more for that, then fine. Later on, I don't mind giving those guys shit. Though, trust me. But and one thing I just will add is that they deserve a ton of shit, and for nobody to use them well before any of this controversy ever took place. So
Correct.
I really don't mind. So we did celebrate the 50th anniversary of the John Sinclair Freedom Rally, and we talked about that on here, and I know that worked out really well. John was really happy about it. On that show that we talked about it, we had Dr. Detroit on, Mike Whitty, and Gail stepped in for a minute as they were talking about how they did acid at the rally, 50 years ago. Gail came in to confirm it. And
John Sinclair said, I'm sorry, Jamie. John Sinclair said a quote that sticks with me right now as he was sitting with the microphone in his hand talking to those of us that were gathered there. He said, in the old days, I'd get 2.5 life sentences for the amount of weed I've got on me right now.
Yeah.
Now,
Yeah.
realize
So
that's a really smoky room where everybody's got cannabis, and we're all enjoying our opportunity as adult as recreational users or medicinal users. So it's all legal and legit. There's nothing wrong with it. But to recognize how harsh things were back then.
And John was not the outlier. There were a lot of guys sentenced to extreme long periods of time because they were caught with somewhat large amounts of cannabis. So,
Well, so one of the famous smugglers, Bobby Platsorn, he's one of our friends, and of course we also had Boston George, who was a notorious smuggler, who unfortunately we had to memorialize this year.
Yeah, that's we'll just get to that as soon as we get down through this a little bit, I think, and I think it's about time to think about all the other stuff that we need to get to, and then we'll hit some future stuff in the next few minutes. But just to wrap up December here, on a happy note, the Cannabis Give Back effort. It was initiated with the Redemption Foundation and Ryan, and designed to help a lot of the great organizations that are doing a lot of the great work right now. Sons and Daughters, Glenn, Great Lakes Expungement Network, Michigan Cannabis Freedom Coalition, which works in conjunction with the Clean Smoke Initiative. And there were a $20,000 goal, $24,000 were raised. And then afterward, there was the gala at the MICIA gala at the Radisson in Lansing, and Josey was there. And during that time, many people pledged and agreed to donate some more money. And during the telethon, Sons and Daughters directly got another $1,000 in donations during that time. The whole thing was just a great success. She talks a lot about just how great this year was, how many people were giving, and how she was able to turn that into. And we had her on and talk about that a little bit along the way. And
of course, we'd be wrong to not mention Sons and Daughters providing Christmases for 17 families that they adopted and bought presents for.
Sure.
In addition to all the other great things that we just talked about with Josey, she's also responsible for that. So, and the Great Lakes Expungement Network does important work. Good stuff.
Yep. So Botanical Company's we've been working with them. It's a third year on that one. And it's because of all the people that keep on coming back, and the growing thing that they're able to do more. So, I mean, they've expanded what they're able to do for some of these families, get them things that they have and need, as well as gifts. We talked about that before, and we'll get back to that a little bit again. One of our guests who's talking about the future might just be Josey today later on in the show. We had Ida Pearl Lee on. Also because she was set to join us on that telethon, and we got into, and she is the deputy director of the Michigan Cannabis Industry Association, and we talked to her a little bit about what's going on with the industry association and their position on some of the legislation that we care about and all that kind of stuff. And
also hostess of the MICIA CannaCast.
Yeah, and I guess the telethon was based around having that broadcast representatives from that broadcast, Jazz Cabbage Cafe. Rick and I, of course, took part in the telethon. Smoke and Rope, Ryan and Tom Beller and Kevin Freebus. And was there one more? Oh, Planet Green Trees. Michael Camorn was on there with us, and hosted that telethon that was just wildly successful. So that was a great one. Adam checked in from the Emerald Cup.
I did.
And last week we had Barton Morris back on, and we talked about Rudy Gamma, who's now, he got denied, as we talked about earlier, from the judge about his ability through that reconsideration to get out. But he's now in the process of seeking clemency through the governor, and he has made it a couple of notches in that a lot of people don't get to, as Barton explained. So it's very promising. And there is LPP, Last Prisoner Project, does have a link on their site. I know it's on their Facebook site, it's probably on their regular website. You can utilize it in order to contact the people you need to contact, including the governor, to help encourage and to demonstrate your support for Rudy's getting free. Yeah. His wife is awesome. His kids are awesome. I mean, his place should be back at their side. Didn't really do anything. That's not legal now, you know, and that many of us right here on this show have done. Especially,
all 4 of us on the show.
Yeah, I like Rick. I like when you did that with your shirt, because it all of a sudden made Mr. Hashbash look like he was your head.
Oh wow!
I was the head
Let's
on the
try
bottom.
that again.
He's right above you. Yeah, there you
Oh,
go.
look at that.
That's something. Thank you so much.
Hey, Latrice caught that.
That's great.
She caught that you had Free Rudy on your shirt somehow.
Well, I was not very subtle about it. I actually showed it off. You know how I am.
Hey, so I mean, that was weird, but we got through a year of a bunch of stuff. I know there's more things that happened and what have you, but that was the perspective of our show, and I think we covered a lot of the really important things, good or bad.
You guys bring up the Antio Fest? You guys talk about
Yeah,
that?
We did bring up the
sure
Antio
did.
Fest. If you want to weigh in on it for a second, man, because you showed up a little bit late, feel free to do so.
Yeah, I
We talked about
late,
Prop
you
E2.
know. I was stuck in traffic, and then I got detoured because some car flipped and hit a telephone pole. It was really there. If anyone's driving, be safe. But yeah, Antio Fest. I was in the inaugural in September, commemorating the anniversary of the passing of Ann Arbor's resolution to decriminalize plant medicines and fungi and sacred stuff like that in the city of Ann Arbor. That was followed by Ellie Savitt, our county prosecutor, passing his own entheogen policy in the whole county of Washington. And now we're working on an Entheo Fest, the second annual. We're working on a lot of fundraisers. Decrim Nature's got a couple fundraisers coming up, hopefully in January and February. More details to come. Really looking to just raise some money for this year and push to get other cities going.
Great. It was a lot of fun, and we talked about Barking Dog as the keynote speaker. What a fantastic guy Daryl Brown is.
Yeah, Daryl Brown's amazing artist. I have a piece of his work here. And then let's not forget William Leonard Picard that came in from New Mexico, and graciously took the stage and spoke on some of the stuff he dealt with when he was incarcerated for 20 years for transporting LSD across the country.
Apparently we were frozen for a few, so I don't know what was missed maybe, but I didn't miss anything, so I guess I'm okay.
I didn't miss anything either.
The 4 of us are okay. We can't do much about it, so but good stuff from the Entheo Fest, and really good speakers, really knowledgeable, good information that came out of that whole thing, and it's hopefully going to go down again next year.
Yeah, Moss Herbeholtz, Julie Barron, and myself basically helped put that together, along with student groups like SAPS and DCRIM and SSDP that also participated to just get a lot of people involved.
It makes sense for you in particular to have conceived of that and to have done it in that way, given all your years of work on Hash Bash and understanding the significance of the DIAG and its history and how it relates to everything. And
yeah, Hash Bash
makes sense.
Yeah, it does. There's a lot of issues that are coming up. One of the things that I think the groups that I mentioned have some issue with are are the cultivation and harvest of peyote. A lot of tribes don't want that included in the decriminalization law, and it's really caused some conflict among this whole movement. These groups want to keep it protected by keeping it criminalized so that people don't go and harvest it. And because most of the time the harvesting is done improperly and it's becoming endangered now. So that's why that's the big conflict that
I remember that discussion earlier this year. Yeah, that gets pretty deep. And you learn these things as you go along. You don't have to address the things that seem to be important. And of course, you have to probably wade through some things that are nonsense that are designed for ulterior motives, and some things that are real issues that really should be addressed and be given deference to. So I kind of want to, for me, as a reflection of one thing or just a story of the year, there's so many things that went down, but the way that so many people, groups, organizations across the political spectrum just got together and really helped to thwart these anti-caregiver bills, these big money interest attempts, and benefiting themselves and hurting a lot of the work that we've achieved. We did this in order to move forward. This was incremental gain. This wasn't the final solution to this issue by far. And a lot of people, a lot of forces are thinking they want to make it more restrictive and go the opposite way. So here we are in conflict, and here we are battling, and we're up against some pretty formidable opposition. But all of us together, did this. I mean, the largest industry association, Michigan Cannabis Industry Association, we've had Robin and Ida Lee on here, and Ida Pro Lee on here, and they specifically voted to be in opposition to these bills, and then helped to work very hard in being in opposition and educating the lawmakers on what was going on here. We were up against the smaller industry association of 10 or 12 members or whatever they are of the Michigan Cannabis Manufacturers Association, and a couple other big money interests that agree with them, kind of inferring to the lawmakers that the industry supported this. And the Michigan Cannabis
that they were the industry.
Yeah, they would like to believe that they are, right?
And so that was a great one. I know there's some controversy with George and his group, but those guys, Michigan Caregivers Association, did some demonstrable help to get some votes on the Republican side, and help stave this effort off. That's an example of somebody on a different end of a political spectrum from a lot of us working on this issue that we all came together with on this one thing for a moment. Go ahead, Jim.
Yeah, I was just going to point out, and I'm sure you maybe mentioned it earlier. I'm almost positive you have. Earlier in the year, we had the people from the Rainbow Group, and Adam, you're part of that, and just how that really helped spawn the movement in Michigan for all the activism, at least a lot of the activism we see today.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, Michigan is very much a grassroots effort when it comes to marijuana law reform.
Yeah, and people should watch that episode. That is discussed.
Yeah,
in there, how that helped to shape that reaction, which helped to create the movement. And of course,
Hash Bash is one of those events that brought so many people together from so many parts of Michigan that to then disseminate information back long before we had computers and nonsense like we have now, social media.
So as things were also kicked off by John Sinclair in earnest, and his history that we can look to and see where a lot of stuff got started too. Obviously, Redemption Foundation that we noticed earlier. A lot of groups either formed, re-energized, stepped up. Different things, and just want to try to get some out. If I miss some, mention them, and we'll get on with some other stuff right after. But I just think it's important because a lot of these were just great contributions. We can't list everybody's name. Mm-hmm. Michigan, the Cannabis Freedom Coalition, the offshooting Michael Thompson Clemency Project and the Clean Smoke Initiative. Michigan Normal, of course, we have the executive director. And one of the, I forgot to mention, I had it written down too. One of the things we had in one of our episodes this last year was a tribute to Matt Abel. And
By the way, who got married just recently. Too. Congratulations, Mr. Abel.
Yes, we should mention that too. And we had Keith Straub and Chuck and Tim and Rev Steve and all that kind of stuff. And it was about giving some little tribute to him, which he deserves. And he's stepping down as the executive director of Michigan Normal. We had several of the other previous executive directors on. And Keith Straub, of course, started, Normal, National Normal. And it was John came on too. Adam was on there. That I can't believe I skipped by that one, but that was a really good episode that we had, and I'm glad I remembered that before it got to be too late. Now Rick is the executive director, which is very cool and fitting, and we've given.
And Adam is a board member.
And Adam is a long-time board member, and does a great job. He showed up at Cannon Jam and really did a great job promoting Michigan.
I like being able to poke at him.
So. Michigan ASA, of course, really, really appreciate getting that group revived and having Brandy back in the mix, who is a veteran of activism, and particularly from that, patient-focused perspective, starting off with their work in Ohio. Obviously, we've mentioned them already, Sons and Daughters United, Great Lakes Expungement Network, John Sinclair Foundation, preserving the legacy. More Than Hope. We brought up earlier too. And so, there could be some more out there, but these are the ones that, immediately on the top of my brain that have really done something to help out. Here we go.
Don't forget Black and Brown Cannabis Guild. They've held expungement fairs and worked hard towards that. That's a real strong purpose.
And right. So in this group formed, and it was the basis of some organizations, so people getting together and doing some good work together too. So that's true. And so with that, we have our next guest.
First guest.
Or was our first guest, I guess. Okay. We usually have a guest by now.
Dude.
The mesmerizing Tom Beller from Real Leaf Solutions.
Tom, man.
I'm not as cool as the thing behind me, though.
Yeah.
That's great.
I like to share with my friends,
Get out of there, Tom. Get out of there.
It's a portal, man. No, it's always going. I love it.
Rick and Morty are going to emerge through it. Yes.
Oh.
So, I kind of still like to hear from others. I also really appreciate Botanical Company for supporting me, being able to work with all these groups and organizations and affect this work. And the mission also includes preserving the legacy for them. So it's a unique approach, really, and probably under-recognized, but I'm just very happy to be there and very grateful for that support and ability to do that. We're kind of like, before we get into a little bit more of the future prognostication stuff, Tom, we're kind of spinning around and talking about, what's a highlight for us or a significant event or what we're thankful for this last year.
Oh man, just like any year, the lessons that the year has taught us, honestly, that's kind of where I'm at. I guess we stay diligent. The fight's never over. They're always trying to take it from us, always, no matter what. And continue doing the right thing. Don't give in to what can potentially be greed and bullshit, to sell yourself out, and always stay true. And that's what we plan on doing into 2022. And still, keep on supporting these great organizations and everything like the Monroe Street Fair, trying to have a presence. We'd like to prove to people that, cannabis grown with care in a commercial setting can actually yield a quality that is worth smoking, for sure, because there's a lot of, stereotypes, rightfully so, about what's going on in the market. And, that's kind of where we're at. And we just want to keep doing the right thing. That's all you can ever really do.
Well, you certainly have set a good example of doing the right thing, Tom. And you've also been involved in the Smoke and Rope podcast too this year, haven't you?
Yeah, I'm still surprised that they invite me back every week, but I'm there nonetheless, you know.
Hey, Rick and I get to join you there tomorrow.
Yep. Yeah. 2 times in 1 week, you guys. That's very special.
Yeah, that's a better relationship than I have with anyone else. So,
Whoa.
Well, tune in.
I'm always shocked when I get an invitation to one of these shows. I appreciate it.
no. So, Tom, I mean, you guys have worked with the state for a whole year. You've seen an evolution
3
on
years.
their part.
February.
3 years. Yep. I mean, when we just look back at 2021, has there been an improvement in the way things operate for you and your people that you can really point to? Something that you can say, good move?
I think that I think that they're listening, but change happens at the speed of government, and we know how that goes. So that's the reality. I like to. You have to be patient and understanding, but also we're also known to kind of poke the bear a little bit just to get an answer on, even a non-answer or a, we don't know is okay, but something sometimes. But for the most part, from the very beginning, it was very loose and building the plane while we're flying it. But now the regulations are relatively in place, and they're looking to start making sure that people are following all of the guidelines, i.e., fines and things of that nature. Enforcing regulations, and things are going to move towards GMP as we federally legalize cannabis and hopefully do it in the right fucking way. But when that happens, that we're working to implement GMP into our whole business plan, and anyone that's not doing that right now should probably be thinking about that if you're in the licensed market. But anyway, I guess anything in particular this year, there's a lot, I guess, like I said, remain diligent, that they're still coming, that it's never going to be over. There's always going to be a corporatization takeover, and they're going to take the last damn thing that's sacred, which is our medicine, and make it into something that, you know what I'm talking about. So keep fighting, it can be done the right way. And I think we can show them that being responsible and interacting in a positive way can actually build bridges and make this work in a good way, but steadfast.
Right on. Hey, Adam, you want to chime one in?
Not really. I forgot what I was going to say.
No.
Sorry.
If I would point to one thing this year that I thought was just a real turning point, that would be, 100 to 200 people showing up for the Regulatory Reform Committee to protest the Anti-Caregiver Bills. I've been doing this for a long time, since the very beginning, and maybe once have we had a response of that magnitude. It was really just remarkable. So maybe twice now that
maybe in 2012.
Yeah,
Right.
That's true. Another time when I just about got kicked off of the microphone. So, but the reality of it is, it showed that despite all the stuff that's been going on nowadays, we can still be unified. And by the way, social media is an effective platform to organize.
Well, that's the real kicker for me, is that, this was something that was done completely via social media. And it's not like the old days where you needed to have your ducks in a row for April so that you could get your rallies and your events done throughout the rest of the year by dispersing flyers at Hash Bash. Now we can do 6 weeks out, 4 weeks out, 2 weeks out if we need to, and get enough people. And some of these, shout out to these people on these local ordinance fights where they get, an overflowing crowd to show up at a local community meeting. That's impactful, especially in these small communities. But any involvement where you do more than, send a letter or make a phone call, if you get up out of your house and you go show up somewhere at a meeting, or you show up, at a protest of some kind, they pay attention to stuff like that.
Yeah. No, I think it really was a unifier. In 2019, after we got the legalization passed in 2018, a lot of people in 2019 thought activism was done. We don't need to. Mission accomplished.
We don't need you, right?
Check that box off the list, baby. But we really didn't see that to be true.
Don't forget, people thought that weed was legal. Yeah. I'm the first person that's going to say there is no. I agree with the yippies. There is no such thing as a good pot law. I'm not into this law thing. We don't need this. We're better than that. And I understand how the regulated market and all that's going to play out. I just hope I live long enough to watch it fail and society, do the right thing and say, you know what? It's cannabis, for God's sake. Leave it alone. Nobody cares.
One of the biggest stories of the year is California struggling with just exactly that, the potential collapse of their regulated marketplace, because again, they have their rules are just bizarre. They have a high tax, and there's a lot of excess cannabis floating around.
And they want to blame it on the black market.
Yeah.
Which the black market isn't affecting the regulated market there. The regulated market there is being affected by other things, not the black market.
Well, they're people that divert from the regulated market to the unregulated market via something called burner distribution licenses, where they can buy one of these on a temporary basis, purchase a whole shitload of cannabis, and then just abandon the license and then go do what you will with that cannabis. Of course, it's still a felony, but it's really hard to track people down when they're good at creating false identities in order to secure these burner licenses.
Right.
So there's a couple of articles that just recently came out about that too. And of course, I hate to make California seem like it's eminently important, because I think that's been a real detriment to the cannabis industry over the years as California has struggled and people look at it and think that it might be difficult for us to have a good program statewide. But it is true that bad things happening in California does affect the national attitude towards cannabis law reform. And if Cali is struggling to get things right, that makes it less likely that lawmakers would like to duplicate that on a federal level. And we didn't see any progress at all on federal legalization. We heard a lot of blah, 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 but we got a lot of nut. So, unfortunately.
Some bills introduced, and that was it so far.
Yep.
So, Jim, besides Entheofest, anything else that you want to acknowledge?
For the year 2021?
Yeah.
I think it's just like you guys were saying, just seeing all these groups participate and help with all the different causes. And the podcast. I mean, it's been building on just the lockdown from 2020. Like, to begin with, I think it's really helped ramp up these groups in general, because people were looking for places to go. People were looking for ways to help. And I remember, even remember Shelley started making masks herself. I mean, stuff like that continues today into 2021 and hopefully into 2022. Hey, Nicole, Jim. But yeah, that's I think that's the beauty of COVID, I guess. If you're looking for the silver lining, and then it's the togetherness and people's ability to put things in perspective a little bit more, to see for the greater good.
Rick, you're muted.
You're muted, Rick.
Because I'm a professional. I just was testing you guys. So, this is season 5, episode 52. So if anyone wants to take a look at some of our back episodes, follow our YouTube channel. You can take a look at previous episodes best through there. Our Facebook page, it might be difficult to scroll down for more than a couple of months there. But, of course, we have probably the last 7 months on Alexa, Spotify, and other locations too.
Right on. So I do want to still take some time out and talk about those who we've lost this last year and some other stuff. But maybe we do that in a little bit, because while Tom is here, would like to talk to him about his vision of the future as a participant in the industry, as somebody who's just familiar with what's going on, having had a part of the history as a caregiver in this movement, and with all the stuff that's gone on in 2021. And you did start talking a little bit. I mean, we do have to stay vigilant against the big money forces into 2022 and some other things. But what else do you see going on for next year?
Beware the boofification of the market.
Right.
Beware the boofification of the market. 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 Beware the boofi and flooding, of the market. And, it's good to see the actual proper corrections happen in pricing. Honestly, I mean, we just had a market correction ourselves in order to adjust to what's going on. And that shows me that things are getting to the point where, hopefully there will be a place that, people can afford, have some kind of, balance with the the black market, which will always be there, and it always should be there. I mean, I feel that I feel like people should be able to gift their medicine to their friends. I mean, honestly, the control thing has to stop. But I'd say we're going to see more further market correction. Hopefully, it doesn't become a California situation where these large grows that are just growing as much as they possibly can. They're remediating whatever they may be doing in order to pass testing. That was what's going on with that kind of situation. Hopefully we can kind of stem a lot of that and have a grading system for cannabis to a point where people can start looking at it in the proper manner, and as far as quality and how it's grown and the care that's taken into bringing proper cannabis to the market. And the pricing has to work for people. I mean, they can't be priced out of
How about not priced based on the THC number, a single percentage
Right.
of one cannabinoid?
Sure. Yeah. Hopefully that comes with, further education and, maturation of the market, which doesn't happen as quickly as we would hope. I mean, I've had this conversation for 3 years in the regulated market.
Sure.
Since the very beginning. And we had some of the first flower out on the market, and we saw what other people had. And it was just like, and what people were charging was ridiculous. Like, this is not sustainable. There's no way that at the end of the day, the person that comes into the store is going to be spending $60 to $100 for an eighth. It just doesn't make sense. What you're going to do is, if you really want to bring people out of that black market you're so afraid of, then produce a product that is of equal quality at the same price at least.
Well, it's one of the things they talk about in California. Okay, go ahead, Rich.
Tom, did you say boofification? Because
Yes.
I did.
That is awesome. What a great thing. I'm sorry, Johnny.
The brain does things sometimes.
Well, the idea would be for this fix, or to solve the problem, instead of continuing to create more restrictions and prohibitions and laws and consequences and raids and arrests and all that kind of stuff, make the industry itself less restrictive, less costly, more efficient, more functional, more competitive.
Yeah, that's a whole other show, man. You talk about that stuff. There's a lot. It's very prohibitive. I mean, the barrier for entry is so high, and we were so fortunate in our family to be able to do something and get through that, even though it was a roller coaster. We're well aware of how hard it is for people to actually engage in the regulated market, and it is extremely expensive. 280E is so prohibitive to anything. We have to justify every single expense to such a scrutiny that nobody else. It's a double standard on cannabis that we've always dealt with, but now I can imagine. I can see why the feds are not quick to change things, because of the amount of taxes they're taking in from the illicits, yet also regulated. Even though the states have blessed this industry, we're still working against, obviously, federal restrictions. So that whole gray area, until we actually do something to legalize cannabis and do it the right way, there won't be a good answer.
Well, and Sean Gallagher was in the comments a minute ago, and we talked about Sean a little earlier in the show. So you might want to rewind a bit back to where we discussed the MICIA party and some of the other things in your appearance on the show, Sean.
Helping out John Schlicker in the Cannapalooza.
Yep. Yeah. And Tom, of course, you're very right. A lot of the industry's progress is being held back by a lack of progress on the federal front. And we really do need some sort of a signal from that agency. Free up the banking industry, free up the insurance industry, free up any of these support industries that they should be able to work with the cannabis leaf touching industry that we have here, not just in Michigan, but nationally. and take one of the burdens off. And then the 280E needs to be fixed, because as a tax exemption situation, that's just, it makes it, what it really does is it makes multi-state operators more competitive than a small operator like Real Leaf Solutions would be, because it puts a huge burden on you. And on an MSO, they already have a whole department to handle that. So it's really not that big of a deal, but the extra taxation can really be crippling, Tom.
Oh, definitely. Definitely. I mean, I say every day, the only thing that I get out of this situation is that I sleep better at night now. Don't make any more money.
Right. Well,
but it's not about it's really not about that. Not about it. The bottom line isn't always the most likely is not the most important thing in most situations. And that's where problems, where we don't care about we're not caring for our employees. We're just causing, we're creating work environments that are not, that aren't healthy. They're not, potentially people working in moldy environments without proper, measures to measure levels of where people are, ensuring that people are working in healthy environments. There's so many things that that need to happen in order to further this industry and make things right. I mean, we always seem to think like we have a good idea of, we're moving in the right direction, and it always just, you want to stay positive, but it just gets taken and twisted and turned into something that, that everyone despises. And then they want you to give up and, and take all the fun out of everything.
Yeah, we're just seeing mergers and acquisitions will be huge in 2022 as when the price of cannabis falls, as it's headed down right now. That decreases the value of the companies which produce and retail cannabis. So you might see some multi-state operators or other big chain stores trying to gobble up, much in the same way Sky Mint just gobbled up 315. And when you look at that, for some mom and pops, it might make sense because of the things Tom mentioned already: the crushing pressures of federal illegality, the tax disadvantage, the compliance issues. And we haven't even talked about municipal problems yet. And that really can be quite stressful for just one guy trying to operate a store on his own.
I'll give you a really good example. We have 2 licenses. Each license we are inspected biannually by the MRA, by the fire. Sorry about that. The municipality, our bank, and our insurance company. So there are 5 separate entities that are biannually inspecting our facility. When everyone's just looking to see that you're actually being compliant with the state guidelines. It's just all this extra scare. It's like it's fear, because the banks are like, oh, well, if we're going to work with the cannabis business, we really have to have 8,000 layers of protection. So that's going to cost money. And how do we pay for this type of extra thing? It's like huge fees, because it's hard to find banking, although Dart Bank's awesome. Huge fees, very limited on, just about anything that we can do anyway. So they have to make that money. And in order to offset all that, the risk that they're willing to take to even talk to cannabis businesses, so on layer upon layer, it's just like, it seems like almost like they don't want it to be legal or something.
Jamie, we should probably get back on track as far as our review of 2021 and looking forward to 2022. And you mentioned talking about people that had passed, and I didn't know if you wanted to get into that.
No, good call. I think we do have to get that in, and may as well now. And we do want to kind of continue to discuss some of our ideas about what might happen next year, but we do need to acknowledge this very important part of the year.
And of course, Marvin, we talked about already. That's Professor Marvin Surowitz, who passed. But we also memorialized OG Eddy Lepp, who passed away. We had Bobby West and some other folks on. And then, of course, Boston George was our really big loss, our big show.
We had Rhonda and Bobby and many others and Daryl and Adam and many others who have been connected to him. Frenchie Cannoli.
Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, we had to do a show about Frenchie too. Yes. Yeah, that's a famous hash maker.
Yeah.
And of course, go ahead.
Oh, just right at the end of the year, there was a decision to put the the pictures on the voter ID cards. Okay, I think he means at the end of the year
cards.
pictures on the MMA certification cards.
Yep. We did just lose Jack Einhardt, one of the founders of MOCC, Macomb Oakland Compassion Club. And if you were in the industry or in the community between 2009 and 2013, you probably went to one of their parties down there. They formed one of the largest clubs in the state. They were really inspirational to a lot of other people who took that idea home. And
they were important, very important early on for a lot of education and how to get people through the process, how to get to doctors, all that stuff.
How to caregiver connections, the whole deal.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah, a lot of people don't understand that there was a time in Michigan when if you wanted a caregiver, you actually would go to a local meeting and try to meet up with local caregivers. That was huge in many communities around Michigan.
Certainly around Matt Abel's place down at Cannabis Council, a lot of those connections were made there. At the Macomb Oakland Compassion Club meetings, Lansing had a farmer's market that ran for a while where they were connecting caregivers and people to. I mean, just all kinds of examples.
We did that stuff at Third Coast too, even though we were, a dispensary, so to speak. We made caregiver patient connections there as part of the operation.
Because that's what benefits you. The people that run multi-state operators don't understand that as a benefit to you. But the fact is, being a cool place where you can be trusted, that's more valuable than any discount you can give me. If I know that the people that are at your place actually have my best interest at heart because they've shown me that, you get my loyalty all day long. And that doesn't necessarily have to be attached to a discount. It has everything to do with personalized service. So when I see places that have iPad ordering systems and things like that, where they keep distance between the real people until at the very last second when it's necessary to complete that transaction financially.
Right. Take the money, right.
Brady mentioned Wild Bill from the National Marijuana Party.
That's true. Wild Bill passed too. Yes.
And Ryan Bringold wants to mention Brighton Compassion, which was also a very good, early, important compassion club with 300 members plus at one point. Dondi Mites, help me out with some other names around there. I can't. I mean, that sucks, man. We should give tribute to a few of those people, but I can't think of some names right now. Todd, something. I don't know.
So, but again, yeah,
Doug Orton,
of course, Doug. Doug was,
Brandy got that.
Well, thank you, Brandy. She's on it,
Right.
But the fact is, Jack was a good guy, and he just recently passed. So we just wanted to make mention of that along the list of people that unfortunately we've had to say goodbye to this year.
Grady from the
Grady Emmons from Marijuana Security Operations.
That was a
that was out of
situation.
the blue. Out of the blue. And that's sad. We did, however, see some births this year. Some notable children popped out of bellies, and we are happy to be celebrating that. Not to dwell too much in the darkness. Let's dwell in the new. And that includes, of course, Ryan and Jenna Basor. We have a beautiful baby. Yeah. And we have a David Rudoy, friend of our show, friend for a long time, my personal attorney. He had a baby this year. I think Kyle Miller had a baby this year, too.
David Rudoy.
I did just mention that.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay. Please keep going.
For sure, David Rudoy. I think Jeff Hank may have.
Confirmed. He may have had two because we just said it twice. I don't know.
Yeah, there you go. Not related to cannabis, but my friend David Herbst had a baby.
Well,
with his
just
wife.
a ton of folks. Yep. Andrew Sumner up in Flint had a child. There's just a lot of people that had kids this year, and I'm glad for it. You know what else happened in 2021? Everybody I know had a birthday.
True.
Observing.
It ain't over yet, bro.
Well, I don't know anybody born on the 30th.
Get out.
Ryan Basor's is 31st.
So almost everybody I know. I amend my statement. Thank you. Rick was wrong. That doesn't happen very often. What? No.
Several times since I've been on here. Buddy.
Not if we've
I love
been,
it.
I think it's been assumed, not if we even mentioned, as we should have, about Tom being from Real Leaf Solutions, one of our great sponsors, joining us again next year.
People
And,
can read it, assuming.
Real Leaf, yeah. But you know, and we talked about it. One of the great early and consistent, you know, cultivators in the commercial market, able to scale up with quality. Other places have been able to do that and emulate that too. But you're certainly doing it early on and help to give a distinction between that and some of the
Low scaling is the key,
Yeah.
and care, and making sure you have shit covered and you're on top of stuff.
And we've heard some stories about some mass production going to remediation right away that never gets recorded any place and then goes to the testing lab and then.
Well, that is
Makes
kind
it
of
on the
a
radar.
2022 situation where we would like to
Yeah.
see any product that's been remediated at any stage during the process of manufacturing would be labeled at the end of, you know, in all advertising and at the end, at the point of sale on the package in a notable. And I would suggest if it's been irradiated that you use the irradiation symbol, and if it's been ozonated that you actually give us some kind of large
03.
indication that it, that's what it is, and slap the sticker on it. If you want to sell it cheap and somebody's willing to, roll the dice, so to speak, go for it. But I think it should be a requirement.
We mention that every single month in our conversations with Director Brisboe and our Consumer Connection, and we're making headway. They're exploring. So I don't think there's any imminent movement, but we keep talking about the need to reflect remediated, not just remediated after testing, but remediated prior to.
Yeah, that's the.
And of course, everything's under camera, so it's not as if you don't know who's remediating, because you can see cannabis traveling through a certain room where it's subjected to microwaves or something.
If you choose to look.
Well, that's it.
Yeah, that takes a lot of people to scour those. I constantly go through. We have 30 days of retention on, about 210 cameras or something. So, it's a lot to look through if you're looking for something, but at least it is there. No, I think it's an extremely important thing, because it's a real thing that needs to be done. And then on top of it, the whole fact that that's what these MCMA companies are screaming about caregivers, and that it's all dangerous, and because it's not tested, and it's full of mold and all this stuff. And then they put stuff out that is full of mold and or been remediated, which is still full of mold. It's just dead, still can cause issues and gross. And you could, like I said, sell it cheap and make sure people know it, and they're willing to do it, and go for it. But take it down.
And again, 27% of the cannabis that was retested after it had hit the shelves and was pulled off turned out to fail for microbials and things like aspergillus. So at that point, you're really talking about a health hazard. I think in 2022, we will see the MRA be more reluctant to issue recalls after their little bit of a spanking this year with the Viridis situation. But I think we haven't heard the last about Viridis yet. I think there's more shit going to happen.
The investigation is still ongoing for one.
Right. I do think in 2022, though, we may see more of an investigation before a recall. And
That's part of it. The state needs to fix their procedures in these situations. That was exposed as kind of.
They just made a perfect argument on why they need more money for more investigators, so that they have teams that can be ready to go and do their thing in a couple days, and by the end of the week.
Well, they might be talking about their own lab to check this stuff. And I think if that's the case, which is part of a discussion for a lot of people, that's fine. But the argument, or you're using our competitors, doesn't mean that those other labs are being unscrupulous or unethical and forging different results, in order to hurt their competitor. I mean, I think there's got to be some evidence of that.
Can we back up to what Rick was talking about with the THC levels possibly having some problems with those numbers?
Well, that's not impossible.
Rick, you were alluding to that when I jumped on earlier.
Yeah, the Viridis method is something that's been documented. It's in court documents for the Court of Claims. Talks about a unique method that they use to determine THC percentage, which typically yields results over 30%, which are considered to be rare in the industry itself here in Michigan. So
Their numbers appear to be about 10% higher than other places.
So they may have a method that ultimately gets demonstrated to be valid and sound within this context, depending on.
Well, they were unwilling to share, right? They claimed that it was, proprietary.
That's true.
Whatever.
But you'd have to imagine that the only reason, and it might not be the only reason, some people might argue that they found just a better method overall and that might be able to describe
Trying
that.
it out.
But for whatever reason, I mean, the higher THC is very attractive to people in the market, as we discussed. And as we discussed, it's very difficult to get that out of people's systems or to demonstrate why that shouldn't be relied on as a basis for value, or that you're going to get higher. And people still call it potency sometimes. That's a misnomer. And it's a difficult.
I would say if the methodology is sound, and I don't know much about this Viridis method they're talking about, but I mean, I like a high THC, but I like if it can have 4% terpenes, 3% terpenes, and it also some kind of profile is nice, and if it's grown right and it has, I like high THC.
I don't doubt that you don't like high THC, but I do doubt that you have like a really good reason to tell me that it does anything differently than if the number were lower necessarily.
I guess it depends, man. I don't know. I have a few strains that I can smoke a 1 gram joint 3 times a day and get high 3 separate times, and it's probably the terpene, the ensemble effect of that particular strain. But I guess I'm not arguing that. I get that, but the problem is pumping it up. So if the methodology is standardized and everyone is looking at apples and apples when it comes to THC, then yeah. But when you have a methodology that you're not willing to share, it's like, oh yeah, that's come on.
well,
that's the problem here. It's like, if you can't grow something over 16% or 14%, you have to send it to another place and have, and hope that they can give you a different result. Then that's
my point was, even if it is a method that's determined, to be okay scientifically, it was designed around attracting people because you're consistently getting higher THC results. Is what I would think is the most obvious reason to even create a new system.
Well, yeah, people should not be buying cannabis based upon THC levels, period. It's just, it drives me nuts. But
hey, Brad wants to know if anybody thinks the testing issues will help fend off the Cannabis Safety Act.
I think they have already. I think that we didn't see any effort to try and push them at the end of 2021. And I think that's due to, in a large part, to the lobbying that we've done personally, but also because it's hard for them to maintain the statement that cannabis is safe if it's tested when we have this gigantic scandal that illustrates otherwise. So the longer this remains in the news, the better we are as far as stopping the bad caregiver laws, as far as I'm concerned.
And we are joined by Josey Scoggin, who, of course, has joined us a few times this last year.
Hey, Josey.
I came in to compliment Tom's shirt.
And Tom, I didn't mean. Sorry,
so
Tom, I
much.
didn't mean to start any controversy with my discussion on the THC or whatever.
Oh no, absolutely not. No, dude, that wasn't really what I was getting at. But we'll drop that. It's good to see Josey.
Right
I'm so excited.
Wow.
What's up, Josey?
So I want to talk about what I'm expecting for 2022. And obviously, I think we have lots of great things going on, but I also think we have a hard fight for home grows coming up. I think it is naive to believe that they're only coming after caregivers and that this won't go into the recreational market and it won't extend to anybody who's over 21. This idea that people that grow at home are a nuisance in some way. So I just want my friends, when they're talking to their legislators, to be careful. Try not to use trigger words. Don't blame these incidents on recreational growers. I'm really excited. I'm looking forward to more events. I'm looking forward to seeing all of my friends all across the state. I think we're going to have Hash Bash this year. So, I mean, what else matters?
So Josey, I want to confirm what you just said about not blaming the AU gardens. I've been on a couple of meetings when some local council or board meetings could be online, and I've heard people say that, and I have not liked it. I appreciate you kind of
Yeah, we got in trouble before, so we were, this is what happened. We would talk about,
Well,
it's
if
not
they're
us.
ever successful getting past knocking down the caregiver system and medical plans, they have a foundation built already for why the other ones are a problem to go after them.
Right. And if they're going to go after people who have to register and only represent a small fraction of Michigan consumers or Michigan cannabis growers, then it's naive to believe that won't be extended. So who we vote for in 2022 matters. The people you select for your attorney general matters. I don't know how many of you guys were here in the shooty years, but we were talking about it today. People literally died. We had that cop who was in the middle of a caregiver situation. He was a caregiver doing the DAISY system. And while awaiting trial in Grand Rapids, he killed himself and he left behind a whole family of young people. That would not have happened under Dana Nessel, right? That would not have happened under some of these, under probably literally anybody else. And then,
This is during the time that felonies were being charged for extracts or concentrates, the things that were not leaf or bud. And then
right,
and the
we
cop,
didn't know.
and he was making butter. And this ties into the previous behavior that we take
I
issue
think he
with
was a
these guys that are running
corrections
various
officer. I don't think he was an official cop. I think he was like a corrections officer, but it didn't make it sting any.
He worked at a jail or a prison or something.
Right.
That's what he did.
But being directly involved in this, there were people that definitely were on the forefront, and so many of our friend Danny Turbino, who was the first to operate here in Lansing and is now in prison for marijuana, for doing the very thing that some other operators are doing right now. I just want you guys to really think about what your vote means this year. I mean, 2022 is a huge year here in the state of Michigan. I'm really excited to be a part of it. Also, remember when you're making these social equity plans that the Great Lakes Expungement Network is the best, most obvious, and literal approach to social equity. It is easy to explain to your customers, and it really makes an impact in all the areas. One more thing before I go, please make Sons and Daughters United your Facebook fundraiser for your birthday. Krista did that for us, raised us over $500. It was super generous. We get 100% of those donations.
She means Tom's counterpart right there, who also.
That's right. We just saw Krista on Tom's camera.
And you can do that for Great Lakes Expungement Network too. You can also go on Amazon Smile and make sure you select Sons and Daughters United as your charity. We'll get 1% of all your shopping purchases. You don't have to do anything different. I also want to thank all my friends and everybody at Jazz Cabbage for the best motherfucking year I have seen ever. I mean, this was so great. We've built a really great team at Glen and all across. I've met so many volunteers who went through the program. They were like, this is the shit. I want to do this. And I've also met a lot of really fun people at events, and I'm excited and looking forward to the next year.
That's wonderful.
More events.
Yeah, we talked about some of your accomplishments earlier today too, Josey, including adopting 17 families this year and raising some money through what the Cannabis Gives Back telethon, things like that.
You know, in the botanical company just did like a in-store fundraiser type thing, and we want to get some other stores to do that too. But that worked out pretty well, didn't it? Or
So
is working? I guess you know what? There's still a couple days left.
There's a couple days left, so I can't believe it. You go in, any dollar that you spend or that you donate to Sons and Daughters at the Botanical Company in any of their 3 locations, they match. So not to put you on the spot, Tom, but if you wanted to right now go make a donation to Sons and Daughters at the Botanical Company in Kalkaska, which is super close to you, you could, and they would match
real leaf
whatever
stuff.
it was. Yeah, I hear they carry all the good stuff there.
Maybe a couple Franklin Fields,
especially
you know,
relief.
just to mix it up a little bit.
We're the cannabis workers in Kalkaska shop.
Yep.
What did he say?
That's where the cannabis workers in Kalkaska shop.
Right on.
Yeah. And they also have a location in Tawas. They have one in Lansing right by the airport. We're also looking for more places to do matches with. I think that getting customers involved and getting back in an industry like ours is super easy and super fun. And a lot of the people that shop at these places are looking for ways to to be involved in the industry. So this is a great way to do it.
Right on.
Fantastic. Good deal.
Thank you, Josey. Appreciate it.
Thanks for letting me compliment Tom's shirt because I really truly love it so much.
I'll make
Check
sure.
out his wall art. Check out his wall art. Spin that again, Tom, will you? Oh yeah. That's it.
In the portal.
I think the girls are the coolest motherfuckers in the world. Look at this. Look at them.
That's pretty
Chris is
awesome.
over there dancing
It
right
gets
now.
better. It gets better. It gets better. We have
Oh,
fun.
There you go.
Oh, there you go.
That in
Oh,
the
the kaleidoscope.
Oh, to the
This is
kaleidoscope.
conversation, I may not actually have
Nice, Tom.
to achieve
There you
this.
go.
Anyway, it's cool if you look at that with this, and then it's all over. Anyway,
We don't need any
Maybe it's
entheogens.
I don't know.
Nice.
Well, what a great recap of 2021 and some good outlooks for 2022, Jamie.
So you're asking me my good outlooks for 2022?
No, I'm sort of summing up the show so that we can move towards ending it because it's just about time.
It is just about time, and you are correct. I was going to see if anybody had anything else to add, and then wrap it up. Do you want to leave us with anything, Josey?
Go to Botanical Company and make a night match donation. You have until Friday, New Year's Eve. Please make us your Amazon Smile charity. Come and register for expungements. Happy New Year. Thank you guys for having me on.
Right on. Tom, you want to add anything on top of all the great information you've discussed with us today?
well, every day is a blessing, and looking 2022 is all we can do is look forward, and I can't wait to get together, and we can hopefully things don't get shut down, and we can still get together and celebrate the Monroe Street Fair, and more events, and celebrating cannabis because of all the hurdles and all the BS out there. The best part about cannabis is bringing people together, and we're hoping that we can do more of that this year, and I can't wait to see you all out there.
That's awesome. Jim, you want to?
Yeah, just Happy New Year, everybody. It's been a great year. Thank you, Rick and Jamie, and for just such a great year. It's been great being a part of your show, and I'm excited about next year. Jump into all the decrim movements. Contact your legislature. Get involved in the politics of this. Everyone's voice needs to be heard. That's all I got.
Right on. Adam.
Yeah, I would say that 2022, in my opinion, we still got a lot to do. I mean, we still have a lot that needs to get done in order to create what some of us had envisioned. Whether it happens in the next year or the next 10 years is yet to be seen. But all we can do at this point is move the ball forward, and anything we can do to help move the ball forward is important. So,
Right on. Well, I'm encouraged by all of the people and groups and organizations that are able to come together and work together at times for specific things. And when these really serious threats come around, like trying to eliminate the caregiver system, and we're able to do that and at least stave it off, and we got to stay vigilant. We have a lot of work ahead of us. That's encouraging to me. I know we can do it. And 2022, I want to feel like, with the exception of the vulnerability we'll have in lame duck at the end of next year, that we'll be able to keep a lot of these bad things at bay. So with that, Rick, should wrap us up our final Jazz Cabbage of the year.
Well, the cannabis industry has always been about people. And when I look at 2022, I see an opportunity for people to succeed and exceed, but I also see an obligation to people, an obligation to the people that are still incarcerated, an obligation to the people that are kept out of the cannabis industry through financial considerations, or people that are just disadvantaged in other ways. So the cannabis industry always been about people, and that should be our focus going forward in 2022. And I know every year it's easy to say things like be more compassionate going forward, or shake the hand of a stranger, things of that nature. But really, in 2022, really, we have an opportunity to make a difference in people's lives. A lot of people didn't get social interaction due to COVID lockdown in 2020. Some of them are coming out of their houses in 2021. In 2022, all those organizations that you heard everybody mention earlier, they're all looking for members. They're all fun things to do and great people to be around. And if you heard the recap, there's a lot going on in the cannabis industry. There's never a shortage of an emergency or an event to attend. So, people, this is your year. Let's get it done. Let's get involved and really start saving your own lives, because I think it's cannabis that'll help you do that. And that's it.
Right on. Cannabis is good. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Tom. Thanks, Josey,
Guys.
Peace.
Jim, Adam, Rick, Jazz Cabbage Cafe.
Appreciate it.
See you guys. One more little note here. See you guys in the new year.
Yeah.
Jazz Cabbage Cafe.
Peace.